Well, how did last month's reflection go? When you went through those questions again, I wonder if you found it difficult to accept that no one owns any country or the planet. We're so used to saying mine. This is my country. The desire to own, to possess, is very deep in the human psyche. Ownership. When we first started moving from one country to another, there was always the question asked, who has the right to this land? You can think back a few centuries to when the migrants from Europe went out to what we now call the United States, and the endless battles with the indigenous people who didn't feel they had to fight for the right to the land that they'd always lived on. It's still happening today, you know. We've got the migration problem, or the problems that we feel are inevitable when people move from one part of the planet to the other. We have them again. But it all comes from this desire that we have for ownership, for authority. This is mine. My land, my rights, my right to justice in society, the right to vote, the right to protest, the right to have means of development, you know, work, education, choice of religious tradition, healthcare, etc., etc., etc. We have the right to it. We can own it. It's mine. To a certain extent, it has been good that these rights have been recognized and honored, but we have to admit that they're not universally accepted throughout human society today. And we're still quite seemingly unconcerned or not sufficiently concerned with the high proportion of our human family that seem to have no rights to basic living conditions at all. We are in an age of abundance and achievement. And one of the greatest challenges to us is this challenge to realize that we do not have the right to ownership. We saw it last month in the right to saying this is our land, or this is my home. The right to possessions, personal value systems. Let's have a look now at my own value system. What do I want to possess? Whom do I want to possess? It's my house, these are my children, goods or relationships, social position, the right to authority over others, in workplace, in the golf club, doesn't really matter where, political party. Do I have a right to my own humanness, my own humanity? We would claim the right to my own body, psyche, person, to the skills, the gifts, the intelligence I have, my nationality, my life. Have I ever heard myself thinking or saying, I could let everything else go but this, but that person? This would be my main value. Now again, as we did last time, we have to take those questions and our answers to them, our immediate answers to them, and toss them around for a bit. Remember the picture of the kaleidoscope? Just let them all fly in the air around our minds, but then sit down, settle down, listen to the inner stillness, and see what really has emerged. My life. Is that the one important gift I have? Perhaps if I do that, I will find arising in me the question, now where in my value system is my relationship with the source of all that exists, that one source who alone brought and brings everything into existence, and therefore the only one with the right of ownership. God, by any name, the one who brought all into existence, including me. There is another aspect to that question about my land, my universe. Could I really bring anything into existence? Bring something into existence out of nothing? No. In English, we frequently confuse the word for creation and creativity. We can really only use the word to create when we bring something into existence out of nothing. What we're really talking about very often is creativity, which is simply rearranging of what already exists. Whether it's in the arts of music and painting, of literature and dance and so on, or it's in the sciences. All the physical elements are there. We haven't created sound. We haven't created rhythm. But we rearrange the elements, both in science and in arts, to discover new relationships between those things. Research is all about this, finding new relationships between what is already in existence. It is not creation, it's creativity. So we do not own because we cannot bring it into existence. The basic question here is, could I bring anything into existence out of nothing? That would be creation. But we cannot create. We do have the skills in what we call creativity. And creativity is when we see or try out new arrangements, new relationships between things that are already existing, between different aspects of physical reality. Discovering these new relationships between different elements, for example, brings new effects, new benefits, or research into every branch of human knowledge, from medicine to music, is really this: the rearranging of what already exists into new relationships. This is really not new to us. In our earliest scriptures, the book of wisdom, we call the Vedas, in one of the sections, the Upanishads, they teach these lessons with very simple stories. And in the Upanishads we have this story. that all the major elements and powers of physical reality, such as wind and earthquake and fire and so on, were talking together. And while they were talking, an unknown being appeared somewhere close to them, something they did not recognize. And so, in turn, they said, "You go and find out what it is." And in the end, Wind decided he would go. So Wind came forward and met this unknown being, but before he could say, "What are you?" the being said to him, "Who are you?" And he had said, "I am Wind." And the being said, "Well, what can you do?" And the wind, and you think now of the storms and the tornadoes that have raced with destruction across many parts of our planet Earth, many countries, and tens of thousands of homes, even in the last few months. Keep in your mind perhaps some of those television news pictures of that sort of devastation. And Wind says, "I can blow away anything I want." And the unknown being reaches out and picks up a single straw and says to Wind, "All right, blow this away." Wind tries, the hurricane starts, and the straw does not fall to the ground. Amazed, and really rather ashamed, Wind goes back. The others are waiting to hear, "Well, who is it? What is it?" And Wind says, "I don't know. You go." And says to Fire, "You go." And again we can think of the wildfires across the continent of North America, but also in Asia and in Africa, which during the last few months have caused as much or even more destruction than the winds and the hurricanes and the storms. And Fire goes up quite confidently, but again, before he can ask the question to this unknown being, "What are you?" he's asked, "Who are you?" And he says, "Fire." "And what can you do?" "I can burn anything that exists." And again, the straw is offered to him. And the question, "All right, can you burn this?" And Fire cannot burn it. Now, the story, if you're interested in it, has a very obvious and interesting ending. You can look it up in the Upanishads. But this brings home and brought home our original wisdom, right from the beginning, that however powerful we think we are, and certainly the elements are, we do not have the power of creation. In this case, they don't even have the power of destruction of what exists, far less than the power to bring something into existence out of nothing. Blow it away, burn it, and I cannot do it. And of course, the realization came, I cannot control it, I do not own it. But that desire to own, to be the ultimate authority, is, as I said, buried deeply in every human psyche. Freedom from the desire to possess things, people, skills. The words me and mine are very quick to rise to our lips. But it's only when I can get myself really free from that desire to own, to possess, that I can truly enjoy and develop the gifts of this life. Now, we have always known this. I quoted one story from the Upanishads, our original Vedic wisdom. But if we look at all the religious traditions, the world religious traditions, and their teaching, we'll see that this wisdom was present in all of them. And the attempts that different human beings have made to become free of the desire to be the owner, to possess. Many people in all of those traditions even vowed their lives to gain dispossession. The sadhus, the wandering sadhus of the Hindu tradition, the Buddhist monks, the Christian monastic traditions, sannyasis and sadhus and monks and nuns, in all the traditions, trying to say, this is the challenge. To be able to live, to enjoy, to use, to develop the gifts of this life and of this planet and universe without the desire to be the one who possesses, who owns them. Dispossession. I think in the Christian monastic tradition, we had a misuse of words again, like this creativity and creation. We said that they took a vow of poverty. It wasn't poverty. It was being free to pick up and put down without the need to possess. What we cannot possess, we cannot own, because we cannot create. It's already gifted. A very simple example of that was given once in my presence by a very famous at the time Hindu spiritual teacher, guru, where he had a multitude of followers who'd come halfway across the world and round the world to India to listen to his talks. And he taught the same basic principles over and over again. And when he received the same questions over and over again about which spiritual practice is the most effective, he simply picked up a pot of glue and said, look, there is only one practice necessary. Get the glue off your fingers. You have to gain your freedom from this desire that this is mine. And I have the right and the authority to this. Then you will really be free to live, to use, to develop, to share all the wonderful gifts that we have on this earth. Get the glue off your fingers. Simple, extremely difficult, certainly not easy. But is it worth it? To be able to live in the richness of this world, in the abundance of the gifts and opportunities we have on planet Earth. We were looking last month at something about, we live, yes, in this particular tiny part of this one planet, which is a tiny part of this one galaxy, which is part of this universe, and this universe part, the dimensions are so vast we cannot grasp them. And yet, knowing that we are a minuscule part of this vastness, we still feel, I own it. No. I can have the freedom to enjoy it, to appreciate it, to develop it, and to share it. But it is not mine, and I cannot be stuck to it. To get the glue off my fingers. Just one very small example for the practice for this month, because I'm sure when you go back over the questions of this reflection, you'll find your own. It will touch you somewhere. I recognize that in myself, if I'm honest. Can you enjoy your most valued, your most precious relationship with someone, without jealousy? That is nowhere near as easy as we think. But it's a really very, very good practice. Am I willing to share, to develop, to appreciate, but not say mine and only mine? Have a good month.